Judges 10. Then after Abimelech died, Tola the son of Puah, the son of Dodo, a man of Issachar, arose to save Israel. And he lived in Shamir in the hill country of Ephraim. And he judged Israel 23 years. Then he died and was buried in Shamir. After him, Jair the Gileadite arose and judged Israel 22 years. And he had 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys. And they had 30 cities in the land of Gilead that are called Havoth Jair to this day. And Jair died and was buried in Canaan. Then the sons of Israel again did what was evil in the eyes of Yahweh, and served the Baals and the Ashtaroth, and the gods of Aram, the gods of Sidon, the gods of Moab, the gods of the sons of Ammon, and the gods of the Philistines. Thus they forsook Yahweh and did not serve him. So the anger of Yahweh burned against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines and into the hands of the sons of Ammon. And they shattered and smashed the sons of Israel that year. For 18 years they did this to all the sons of Israel who were beyond the Jordan in Gilead in the land of the Amorites. Then the sons of Ammon crossed the Jordan to fight also against Judah, Benjamin, and the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was greatly distressed. And the sons of Israel cried out to Yahweh, saying, We have sinned against you, for indeed we have forsaken our God and served the Baals. Then Yahweh said to the sons of Israel, Did I not save you from the Egyptians, the Amorites, the sons of Ammon, and the Philistines? Also the Sidonians, the Amalekites, and the Maonites oppressed you. And you cried out to me, and I saved you from their hand. Yet you have forsaken me and served other gods. Therefore I will no longer save you. Go and cry out to the gods which you have chosen. Let them save you in the time of your distress. Then the sons of Israel said to Yahweh, We have sinned. So you do to us whatever seems good in your eyes. Only please deliver us this day. So they removed the foreign gods from among them and served Yahweh, and he could bear the trouble of Israel no longer. Then the sons of Ammon were summoned, and they camped in Gilead. And the sons of Israel gathered together and camped in Mizpah. And the people, the princes of Gilead, said to one another, Who is the man who will begin to fight against the sons of Ammon? He shall become head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. Acts 14. Now it happened that in Iconium they entered the synagogue of the Jews together, and spoke in such a manner that a large number of people believed, both of Jews and of Greeks. But the unbelieving Jews instigated and embittered the minds of the Gentiles against the brothers. Therefore they spent a long time there speaking boldly with reliance upon the Lord, who was testifying to the word of his grace, granting that signs and wonders be done through their hands. But the multitude of the city was divided, and some sided with the Jews, and some with the apostles. And when an attempt was made by both the Gentiles and the Jews with their rulers to mistreat and to stone them, they became aware of it and fled to the cities of Lycaonia, Lystra, and Derbe, and the surrounding region, and there they continued to proclaim the gospel. And at Lystra, a man who was sitting, who had no strength in his feet, lame from his mother's womb, who had never walked. This man listened to Paul as he spoke, who, when he fixed his gaze on him and saw that he had faith to be saved from being lame, said with a loud voice, Stand upright on your feet. And he leaped up and began to walk. And when the crowd saw what Paul had done, they raised their voice, saying in the Lycaonian language, The gods have become like men and have come down to us. And they began calling Barnabas Zeus and Paul Hermes, because he was the chief speaker. And the priest of Zeus, whose temple was just outside the city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates and was wanting to offer sacrifice with the crowds. But when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of it, they tore their garments and rushed out into the crowd, crying out and saying, Men, why are you doing these things? We are also men of the same nature as you, proclaiming the gospel to you that you should turn from these vain things to a living God, who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and all that is in them. In the generations gone by he permitted all the nations to go their own ways, and yet he did not leave himself without witness, in that he did good and gave you rains from heaven in fruitful seasons, filling your hearts with food and gladness. And saying these things, with difficulty they restrained the crowds from offering sacrifice to them. But Jews came from Antioch and Iconium, and after winning over the crowds and stoning Paul, they were dragging him out of the city, supposing him to be dead. But while the disciples stood around him, he rose up and entered the city. The next day he went away with Barnabas to Derbe. And after they had proclaimed the gospel to that city and had made many disciples, they returned to Lystra and to Iconium and to Antioch, strengthening the souls of the disciples, encouraging them to continue in the faith, and saying, "Through many afflictions we must enter the kingdom of God." And when they had appointed elders for them in every church, having prayed with fasting, they commended them to the Lord in whom they had believed. And when they had passed through Pisidia, they came into Pamphylia. And when they had spoken the word in Perga, they went down to Attalia. And from there they sailed to Antioch, from where they had been committed to the grace of God for the work that they had fulfilled. And when they had arrived and gathered the church together, they began to report all things that God had done with them, and how he had opened a door of faith to the Gentiles. And they spent not a little time with the disciples. Jeremiah 23. Woe to the shepherds who are destroying and scattering the sheep of my pasture, declares Yahweh. Therefore thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, concerning the shepherds who are shepherding my people. You have scattered my flock and banished them, and have not attended to them. Behold, I am about to attend to you for the evil of your deeds, declares Yahweh. Then I myself will gather the remnant of my flock out of all the land where I have banished them, and cause them to return to their pasture, and they will be fruitful and multiply. I will also raise up shepherds over them, and they will shepherd them, and they will not be afraid any longer, nor be terrified, nor will any be left unattended, declares Yahweh. Behold, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when I will raise up for David a righteous branch, and he will reign as king and prosper, and do justice and righteousness in the land. In his days Judah will be saved, and Israel will dwell securely. And this is his name by which he will be called, Yahweh our righteousness. Therefore, behold, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when they will no longer say, As Yahweh lives, who brought up the sons of Israel from the land of Egypt, but, As Yahweh lives, who brought up and brought back the seed of the household of Israel from the northland, and from all the lands where I had banished them. Then they will live on their own soil. As for the prophets, my heart is broken within me, all my bones tremble. I have become like a drunken man, even like a man overcome with wine, because of Yahweh and because of his holy words. For the land is full of adulterers, for the land mourns because of the curse. The pastures of the wilderness have dried up. Their course also is evil, and their might is not right. For both prophet and priest are polluted. Even in my house I have found their evil, declares Yahweh. Therefore their way will be like slippery paths to them. They will be driven away into the thick darkness and fall down in it. For I will bring their evil upon them, the year of their punishment, declares Yahweh. Moreover, among the prophets of Samaria I saw an offensive thing. They prophesied by Baal and led my people Israel astray. Also among the prophets of Jerusalem I have seen an appalling thing, the committing of adultery and walking in lying, and they strengthen the hands of evildoers, so that no one is turned back from his evil. All of them have become to me like Sodom, and her inhabitants like Gomorrah. Therefore, thus says Yahweh of hosts concerning the prophets, Behold, I am going to feed them wormwood and make them drink poisoned water. For from the prophets of Jerusalem pollution has gone forth into all the land. Thus says Yahweh of hosts, Do not listen to the words of the prophets who are prophesying to you. They are leading you into vanity. They speak a vision of their own heart, not from the mouth of Yahweh. They keep saying to those who spurn me, Yahweh has said, You will have peace. And as for everyone who walks in the stubbornness of his own heart, they say, Evil will not come upon you. But who has stood in the counsel of Yahweh, that he should see and hear his word? Who has given heed to his word and heard? Behold, the storm of Yahweh has gone forth in wrath, even in a whirling storm. It will whirl down on the head of the wicked. The anger of Yahweh will not turn back until he has done and established the purposes of his heart. In the last days you will clearly understand it. I did not send these prophets, but they ran. I did not speak to them, but they prophesied. But if they had stood in my counsel, then they would have caused my words to be heard by my people, and would have turned them back from their evil way and from the evil of their deeds. Am I a God who is near, declares Yahweh, and not a God far off? Can a man hide himself in hiding places so I do not see him, declares Yahweh? Did I not fill the heavens and the earth, declares Yahweh? I have heard what the prophets have said, who prophesy a lie in my name, saying, I had a dream, I had a dream. How long? Is there anything in the hearts of the prophets who prophesy a lie, even these prophets of the deception of their own heart, who intend to make my people forget my name by their dreams which they recount to one another, just as their fathers forgot my name because of Baal? The prophet who has a dream may recount his dream, but let him who has my word speak my word in truth. What does straw have in common with grain, declares Yahweh? Is not my word like fire, declares Yahweh, and like a hammer which shatters a rock? Therefore, behold, I am against the prophets, declares Yahweh, who steal my words from each other. Behold, I am against the prophets, declares Yahweh, who take their tongues and declare, Yahweh declares. Behold, I am against those who have prophesied lying dreams, declares Yahweh, and who recounted them and led my people astray by their lying and reckless boasting. Yet I did not send them, and I did not command them, and they do not furnish this people the slightest benefit, declares Yahweh. Now when this people, or the prophet, or a priest, asks you, saying, What is the oracle of Yahweh? Then you shall say to them, What oracle? Yahweh declares, I will abandon you. Then as for the prophet or the priest or the people who say, The oracle of Yahweh, I will bring punishment upon that man and his household. Thus will each of you say to his neighbor and to his brother, What has Yahweh answered? Or what has Yahweh spoken? For you will no longer remember the oracle of Yahweh, because every man's own word will become the oracle, and you have perverted the words of the living God, Yahweh of hosts, our God. Thus you will say to that prophet, What has Yahweh answered you, and what has Yahweh spoken? For if you all say, The oracle of Yahweh, surely thus says Yahweh, because you said this word, the oracle of Yahweh, I have also sent to you, saying, You shall not say, The oracle of Yahweh. Therefore, behold, I will surely forget you and abandon you, along with the city which I gave you and your fathers, so that you are out of my presence. I will put an everlasting reproach on you, and an everlasting humiliation which will not be forgotten. Mark 9. And Jesus was saying to them, Truly I say to you, there are some of those who are standing here who will not taste death until they see the kingdom of God having come in power. And 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John, and brought them up on a high mountain alone by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. And his garments were shining intensely white, as no launderer on earth can whiten them. And Elijah appeared to them along with Moses, and they were conversing with Jesus. And Peter answered and said to Jesus, Rabbi, it is good for us to be here. Let us make 3 booths, one for you, and one for Moses, and one for Elijah. For he did not know what to answer, for they became terrified. Then a cloud formed, overshadowing them, and a voice came out of the cloud, This is my beloved Son, listen to him. And all at once, when they looked around, they saw no one with them any more, except Jesus alone. And as they were coming down from the mountain, he gave them orders not to recount to anyone what they had seen, until the Son of Man rose from the dead. And they seized upon that statement, arguing with one another what rising from the dead meant. And they began asking him, saying, Why is it that the scribes say that Elijah must come first? And he said to them, Elijah does first come and restore all things. And yet how is it written of the Son of Man that he will suffer many things and be treated with contempt? But I say to you that Elijah has indeed come, and they did to him whatever they wished, just as it is written of him. And when they came back to the disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and scribes arguing with them. And immediately when the entire crowd saw him, they were amazed. And as they ran up, they were greeting him. And he asked them, "What are you arguing with them?" And one of the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I brought you my son, possessed with a spirit which makes him mute. And whenever it seizes him, it slams him to the ground, and he foams at the mouth, and grinds his teeth, and becomes rigid. I told your disciples to cast it out, and they could not do it." And he answered them and said, "O unbelieving generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him. When he saw him, immediately the spirit threw him into a convulsion, and falling to the ground, he began rolling around, foaming at the mouth. And he asked his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" And he said, "From childhood. And it has often thrown him both into the fire and into the water to destroy him. But if you can do anything, take pity on us and help us." And Jesus said to him, "If you can, all things are possible to him who believes." Immediately the boy's father cried out and was saying, "I do believe. Help my unbelief." Now when Jesus saw that a crowd was rapidly gathering, he rebuked the unclean spirit, saying to it, "You mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and do not enter him again." And after crying out and throwing him into terrible convulsions, it came out. And the boy became so much like a corpse that most of them said, "He is dead." But Jesus took him by the hand and raised him, and he stood up. And when he came into the house, his disciples began questioning him privately, "Why could we not cast it out?" And he said to them, "This kind cannot come out by anything but prayer." From there they went out and were going through Galilee, and he was not wanting anyone to know about it. For he was teaching his disciples and telling them, "The Son of Man is to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And when he has been killed, he will rise again 3 days later." But they did not understand this statement, and they were afraid to ask him. And they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he began to question them, "What were you discussing on the way?" But they kept silent, for on the way they had discussed with one another which of them was the greatest. And sitting down, he called the 12 and said to them, "If anyone wants to be first, he shall be last of all and servant of all." And taking a child, he set him before them. And taking him in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever receives one child like this in my name receives me. And whoever receives me does not receive me, but him who sent me." John said to him, "Teacher, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to hinder him because he was not following us." But Jesus said, "Do not hinder him, for there is no one who will perform a miracle in my name and be able soon afterward to speak evil of me. For he who is not against us is for us. For whoever gives you a cup of water to drink in my name, because you are of Christ, truly I say to you, he will not lose his reward. And whoever causes one of these little ones who believe to stumble, it would be better for him if, with a heavy millstone hung around his neck, he had been cast into the sea. And if your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life crippled than, having your 2 hands, to go into hell, into the unquenchable fire, and where their worm does not die, and the fire is not quenched. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life lame than having your 2 feet to be cast into hell, and where their worm does not die, and the fire is not quenched. And if your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with 1 eye, than, having 2 eyes, to be cast into hell, where their worm does not die, and the fire is not quenched. For everyone will be salted with fire. Salt is good, but if the salt becomes unsalty, with what will you make it salty again? Have salt in yourselves, and be at peace with one another.